Now on to the Sacramento Kings. As I mentioned before the break, NBA.com has released their Western Conference power rankings, putting together where they see the West shaking up as of today. This is not solidified. This is a fluid list, of course, as power rankings do. Their first of this offseason. They have the OKC Thunder at number 1. They have Denver Nuggets at number 2. They have the Western Conference champion Dallas Mavericks currently sitting at number 3. Minnesota Timberwolves at number 4. Phoenix Suns all the way up at number 5. New Orleans Pelicans at number 6. Golden State at number 7. Ladies and gentlemen, they have your Sacramento Kings currently slated at the number 8 spot in the Western Conference, just ahead of the LA Clippers at number 9 and the Memphis Grizzlies at number 10. In their write-up, they do mention the Kings' key addition of DeMar DeRozan and their key departure of Harrison Barnes and Davion Mitchell. A number that you need to know, they have Domantas Sabonis led the NBA in assists on three-pointers per game, second most of any player over the last 6 seasons. He had 4.1 assists on three-pointers, which is, again, the second most for any player in the last 6 seasons. That is not a number I've seen associated with Domantas Sabonis before, so that's a really good nugget. And their key question for Sacramento this season, does DeRozan fit here? And that has been the prevailing question, not even necessarily here in Sacramento, but just from the national media looking at the Kings situation from afar. They write the 15-year veteran who turns 35 on Wednesday. How about celebrity birthdays for DeMar DeRozan coming up? Can still get buckets and get to the line? And the Kings were worse in the clutch games last season, 20-19, with the league's 18th rated clutch offense than they were otherwise. 26-17 in non-clutch games. But it may be a challenge for a player who ranks 4th in total isolation over the last 3 years to fit in with a team that moves the ball as much as the Kings. Perhaps they stagger minutes so DeRozan is the first starter to sub out and then comes back on to run with the second unit. If they can have the best of both worlds while not taking a step back defensively, the Kings should stay in the mix for a top 8 spot in the West. Ben, do you believe that the Kings have improved from last season, as they were a 10 or 9 seed last year? They currently have them as an 8 seed in the Western Conference power ranking. A, do you think the Kings have gotten better this year? And B, do you think DeMar DeRozan will be a complicated fit here in Sacramento?
Number one, yeah, I think they improved a lot.
Yeah.
I also think that, I mentioned that I thought that the Warriors underachieved last year. I think the Kings underachieved a little bit last year. Now, they played well in stretches, but, I covered a lot of the games for the AP at home, and they lost to a lot of bad teams. And I don't know where that inconsistency came from. Mm-hmm. I think if they can find a way to just take care of their business against bad teams this year.
The Pistons of the world, the Hornets
that alone, can give them an extra 4 or 5 games in the standings. But no, I think adding DeMar DeRozan, it might be a complicated fit at first, but I trust Mike Brown and the coaching staff. And DeRozan's a guy who's a veteran. I think he can adapt his game however he needs to. I think they improved a lot because you talked about those fourth quarter, those clutch games.
Yeah.
You've got De'Aaron Fox, who's obviously a clutch player and takes over in the fourth. Having a guy like DeMar DeRozan, having a second guy who is really good in those situations too, can't hurt. The question is, how long will it take for those guys to gel together and be able to play together? But no, I like it a lot. I mean, when you look at the pieces Kings have now with Fox and DeRozan and Sabonis still, I think that they're a lot better than 8th in the West. What about you?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think I would have them above Golden State right now, just with the offseason that both teams
100%
have had. I think it's tough when you start to talk about the Pelicans of the world, because you and I both know
if we
that
lived
went
in a
last
world
year,
with
right?
just the Kings and the Pelicans, it might be bad. Yeah, if you took the Pelicans off the schedule, the Kings might have had
They might have been a 55 win.
Maybe they're due to beat the Pelicans this
Maybe
year.
That's a great way of looking at it. That might be how I approach that matchup for the entirety of next year is, hey, Y'all beat us 6 times. The law of averages here says there's no way that you guys are going to continue to dominate us like that, especially when they're relatively even teams. I think that's the thing that frustrated so many people about that Pelicans matchup last year, is just it wasn't like, oh, yeah, they're the Celtics. Yeah, they're better than us. Of course, we lose to them a ton. It felt like you can maybe nitpick here and there, but it felt like for the most part, those were 2 even teams that just one had their number.
And it was so weird too, because there was like the circle of teams. Because the Kings dominated the Lakers last year.
Killed them. Yes.
And I think the Lakers dominated the Pelicans.
Yes. Yeah.
Matchups, man.
It's
the NBA
so
is such an interesting league.
Yeah, it's so strange. And I think that's why when we do have conversations like we had earlier of where do you have the Warriors slated, all these teams realistically fall from this 10 to hypothetically as high as like 3 or 4 in the Western Conference. That's how good it is. That's how deep it is. And there's so many surprises. I mean, I know Memphis as well.
And you can see, we might see someone take come out of nowhere, sort of the way the Thunder did last year. I don't think anyone
Minnesota
thought the Thunder,
too. Yeah.
Minnesota. I mean, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to see the Kings do that. We saw 2 years ago, the Kings won the division. They were the 3 seed. I could see that happening again this season.
I don't see. Yeah, I mean, there's. I was going to say I don't see why not. There's a tons of reasons why not.
But there's certainly a realistic possibility.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think in general, as we talk about DeMar DeRozan, I've said it a ton of times. I think a ton of people have said it, but I think there could be a bit of underrating going on with DeMar DeRozan, where Kings fans again were so much anticipating a Lauri Markkanen, a Brandon Ingram, a Kyle Kuzma, that when you get a surprise out of nowhere like DeMar, it's almost like, well, I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't properly getting hyped for DeMar DeRozan. And now with it being such a surprise, maybe Kings fans just again, and not just Kings fans, actually, fans across the entire NBA just aren't fully aware of the impact DeMar DeRozan's going to have, as again, in the key departures, they have Harrison Barnes in there. And of course, HB is going to be missed here in Sacramento, but it's just naive for a lot of people out there to say that DeMar DeRozan isn't a massive upgrade over a guy like Harrison Barnes, and that's no disrespect to HB at all.
No, DeRozan's
pro.
Yeah, and DeRozan's just a star.
It's incredible.
I mean, we saw it. I think the national media would recognize it at times when he got hot last year. The last couple of years, really, with the Bulls. I mean, especially in those fourth quarters, he's clutch.
Ridiculous.
But I mean, he's a legitimate star. He's a guy who's averaged 24 points a game or
6-time
better.
All-Star.
The last few years, and I think he's still really playing at a high level.
Yeah, absolutely. I cannot wait to see him and De'Aaron Fox play out there. You mentioned the clutch. I mentioned the clutch moments. I think them, like you said, though, there is going to be a bit of an adjustment period, I think, for a couple weeks there of them trying to figure out, hey, your ball, my ball, your turn, my turn.
Yeah.
And then Malik Monk as well is going to have a bit of a say in that as well. So it's probably going to be a little bit of a bumpy start for them, but I think at some point it's just going to be additive, and I'm sure they're going to figure it out. And again, they were 20-19 in clutch situations last year. You would assume with 2 of the best clutch players in the NBA, that probably goes up. Coming up next, the Kings, they are not a perfect team, and they still have a roster spot in which they could utilize. We look at Evan Sittery's best remaining free agents, and we see if any of those names get us excited as a possible addition for the Sacramento Kings. We talk about that next and more right here on Stiles and Watkins, Sactown Sports.
On the move.